Hello, everybody. My name is Arianna Huffington, and in this podcast, I will share my transformational journey to become a health coach. In each episode, I will address a different subject that impacts our health, whether physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. Because I've learned that being healthy means being in balance. If you would like to make amazing discoveries, improve your health, get inspired, and yet find sustainable ways to live and help the planet, tune in. You are in the right place. I'm your host, Arianna Huffington, and Good is What Makes You Feel Well is Mama Terra's podcast.
Toma banho de cachoeira, abraça uma pessoa amiga, corre na chuva, escala a montanha, contempla a vista, transcende, levita.
Today, I am thrilled to be joined by someone who truly embodies the spirit of legacy building. Marc Joseph. Marc's first book, The Secrets of Retailing: How to Beat Wal-Mart, was written to help small businesses and entrepreneurs stand tall against the big guys. His insights caught the attention of none other than Arianna Huffington, who invited him to become a contributor to the Huffington Post. Since then, Marc has written over 100 articles on topics that matter deeply to all of us, from small businesses and education to homelessness and other causes close to the heart of our communities. Now, as the co-founder of babyboomer.org, a platform bringing together news, resources, and connection opportunities for the baby boomer generation, Marc is expanding his legacy. The platform is an information hub originally designed for people 65 and older that has actually been serving people of all ages. And that's not all. Under the pen name Gramps Jeffrey, Marc also wrote the charming and thoughtful children's book I Don't Want to Turn 3, a story inspired by his real-life experience with his 6 grandchildren, which explores what goes through a toddler's mind and bridges that beautiful gap between generations. In this conversation, we are reflecting on how small acts of care and responsibility today can shape a brighter, more sustainable future for ourselves, our communities, and the generations that follow. Please welcome Marc Joseph. Hello, Marc. Welcome to Good is What Makes You Feel Well.
Hey, I appreciate you inviting me today.
For us to start our conversation, I would like to ask you what, in this moment of your life, makes you feel well?
What makes me feel well right now are my 6 grandkids, and I've got one more coming. So I'm really looking forward to number 7. We were just out visiting my daughter, who has 2 boys who are 5 and 6. And she's the one that's going to be having another boy in November. So that's what makes me happy right now, that life goes on. You know, you take a look at who you are and what's your legacy and what the future lies. And I got all these great little grandkids running around.
Oh, that is so awesome. Tell me how this concept of feeling well or being well, like I said, now it's your grandkids, but how that has evolved throughout your life.
Oh, it's interesting, as we are growing up. And, that's one of the reasons we started our site at babyboomer.org, is because we as baby boomers have a lot to look back on and a lot of information to share with others. But I can see that when I was young, I was aggressive. I was really into the business world. I was looking for things to just grow my career and make more money. But as you get older, you find that your priorities do kind of change. When we step back and think about, worrying about death and leaving this world and all that kind of stuff, you think about what is your legacy? Because you can't take any money with you. No matter how much money you made during your lifetime, you can't take it with you. So, what is it that you're leaving behind that is going to make a difference for other people? And so that's what I've been contemplating lately is, all right, how are they going to remember me? What is my legacy? What am I going to be able to share with the next two, possibly or four generations? And that's what I'm concentrating on now.
Hmm. I love that. Yeah, we all should be worried about the legacy that we are leaving. And I think that's awesome. Is that why you wrote your first book for kids to honor your grandkids and then this phase you are in your life?
So this is my book. It's called I
I
Don't
don't
Want
want
to
to
Turn
turn
Tree.
tree.
That's the name of my book. And I wrote that book, it really came about because of the pandemic. I had a chance to have all six of these grandkids at our house for about 6 weeks. So I had a chance to really see and interact with them, and all six of these different kids have completely different personalities. But the one thing that they have in common is a sense of curiosity. And if you
Mm.
think about life, that's what we need. We need that sense of curiosity, whether we're 3 years old or 30 years old. So I saw how they got excited when they were able to get things down. Watching them grow year to year and how they interact with each other really was the reason I wrote this book because it's a true story. It's a true story of the six kids, and they went through what they went through during this time. You got to ask yourself, what goes through a toddler's mind? And us parents are so desperate to understand. When does a toddler really understand the difference between me and us? Yeah, so the book kind of explores how a family finds that out together. As a baby boomer, trying to understand how the world has evolved since I was 3 years old, is also kind of part of this story because, my parents didn't have cell phones. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have cable TV. They didn't have remotes. I was my dad's remote. He said, "Son, go change the channel." I was the remote at the time. So my parents' definition, of discipline is quite different from my kids, who are now the parents of my grandkids today. You know, has the day's world made for a better place for these children to grow up? I'll let you kind of play with that and answer that because, comparing how we were treated as we were growing up with how the kids are treated today is really also part of the story.
Hmm. Yeah, that is so important. And I love what you said about curiosity, because this is one thing I believe we kind of lose growing up. And this is so important for us to be healthy, to be curious about trying different things, to be curious about practices that will make us feel well, curious about knowing things, knowing new things, and learning new practices, because this is what keeps our brains healthy, right? So we have to just keep learning.
The question we as parents and grandparents, need to keep telling ourselves that it is necessary for us to teach children how to think, not what to think. They're going to learn what to think over their own lifetime, but we need to teach them how to think. And step back a second. And again, that's another reason I wrote this children's book is the benefits of reading to children is just so important. And we should all be doing that. We all should be doing it every night. Because when you think about it, again, a book like mine or any other children's book takes 20 minutes to read, so it's not a big deal. But it gives you, 20 minutes, the parent or grandparent, to actually have time with the child sitting on your lap in reading a book together. Okay, and the benefits of reading the book, there's several. One is the bonding experience. It gives you a chance to be together for 20 minutes. It just kind of forces that. So that's expensive. That's important. Another benefit of reading books to children is it supports listening skills. Now, you and I both know, as we have grown older, listening skills is the best skill you can have. I mean, you as a podcaster, you have to listen to, the people you are working with to ask the right questions. I, as a business guy, have to listen to our customers to make sure we've got the right content for them. So listening skills is the number one skill that we will have throughout our lives. And that can start by raising the kids and having them sit on your lap and just listen to the book for 20 minutes. Another reason we should be reading these books to kids every single night is because of the cognitive and language development it's going to cause. There's many words in these books that I don't understand. I got to go look them up. But there's other words in these books you can sit there and explain them to their kids so they can understand and develop the variety and number of words that they use outside of just reading the book. And another reason is attention span. These 2, 3, 4-year-olds, they jump all day long running around. You get them on your lap for 20 minutes. It gives them a chance for key concentration, self-discipline, and you're teaching them all these things. So I urge anyone listening to you today to make sure they take the time to do this with these kids and grandkids, because that is what's going to fuel the curiosity you were just talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this curiosity we need to carry with us forever. And I believe that if we start that at a young age, teaching those kids how to read and the joy of reading and learning new things and discovering new things, new places, and using their imagination to create all the places and characters and everything, that the book actually opens our minds to create and to imagine, right? And that is so important for us to keep. So you mentioned your baby boomer website. I would like to go into the reasons why you started that and how your life led you to this point.
Before we do that, I'd just like to follow up on what you just said about curiosity.
Okay.
One more thing, the benefits of reading to kids just teaches them, how to think and creates that curiosity. So if again, go back to reading the book, and the first thing you should, even before you open the book, say to your children, what do you think is going to happen in this book? Let that curiosity start there, and again, if you start that when they're young, as they grow, they will, they're going to say, what do I think is going to happen? Let me think a little bit ahead. So going back to what you're talking about curiosity, you have to do that. You ask your kids as they're sitting on your lap, who are the characters in this book? What is the setting of this book? Let them tell you. Let them be curious. Because again, it starts young. Does anything in this book sound familiar to you? Again, or is there something going on in their lives that they can tell you about that helps with that? And then obviously, after you've read the book, what was your favorite part of the book? Why was that your favorite part of the book? Much like, when you're having dinner with your kids every night, you should be asking them, what was your favorite part of your day? Get that going, get that curiosity going. So I just wanted to throw that in because you were making some great points on curiosity, and it all kind of ties together. Because what we do when we're so young, and our parents' influence and our grandparents' influence when we're young, really just keeps following us throughout our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you mentioned a topic for a conversation would be asking if they see any similarity with their lives from the book, right? So how was that experience for you reading to your grandkids about an experience you had with them? Did they recognize themselves in the story?
What's interesting is, the book again was about my six grandkids, and to recap it, and again, anyone can read it, so it's not a real big deal here. But one of my grandkids was turning three, and the week before he was turning three, he kept taking his cousin's toys. From one cousin, he took his dinosaurs. From another cousin, he took his sea animals. Another cousin, they took the trucks. And he accumulated all this into his bedroom. And his older cousin, who was 8 at the time, she is an aspiring dancer. So he took her dancing shoes. And so he came around, and it was time for his birthday, and his older cousin discovered in his bedroom that all his stuff was sitting in the bedroom. And she was so upset because her shoes were in the middle of all this. And so the mom and dad called all the six kids together, and they sat around. What are we going to do about this? And Olivia, who's the oldest one, who was a dancer, at their school, they were just talking about charity and how to help the underprivileged people. And they decided, let's give all this stuff to the homeless people downtown. And so that's the kind of evolution of the story. What's interesting is a couple years after the book came out, I saw in the corner where Olivia was reading the book to three of her cousins. And, one of the cousins, that's me, that's me, and so without asking anybody, without telling anybody, she just did it. So I guess that kind of a long way to answer your question is, it's just great that they can feel that they're all part of the story.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I'm afraid this generation is getting far away from books, and that kind of makes me really sad because I think reading is so, so important. And so I am always trying to encourage people that write children's book to just keep doing this beautiful work because we cannot let this die. And as you said, it's so, so important, this bonding time we have at night, reading a children's book for our kids.
What this generation, these kids that are, 1 to 10 years old today, are going to be the greatest generation this country has ever produced. If you step back and think about it, as soon as they come out of the womb, they're on the internet. They got their cell phones. They have all that information at their fingertips when they're 2, 3, 4 years old. I mean, I didn't get on the internet till I was 40 years old. So it's amazing how much smarter this generation is going to be. Now it's up to us as parents and grandparents to make sure that they grow up balanced. We're the ones that got to make sure they get out and play. That they go into sports, or they go into dancing, or they do whatever they want to do that's outside of the internet, that's outside of these cell phones. It's up to us as we get older to pass on what we have learned when we were kids, when we didn't have cell phones. We had landlines. That's what we had. And that is so important. So you're absolutely right. They are going to be so much smarter than we ever were. And so we just have to make sure that they learn how to do things outside of just working on the internet.
Yeah, yeah. And you're right. It's up to us. It's up to us as parents and grandparents to make sure we have boundaries for everything and make sure they have this balance that you're saying. Yeah, that is the key. Find the balance.
So I didn't want to sidestep your direction. You were starting to talk about babyboomer.org.
Oh yeah, no, that's totally fine. I was just curious about how your life led to the work you were doing now with babyboomers.org.
Well, early on in my life, I was in the business world. And so I created a company that became the premier business-to-business site on the internet, where we sold in case quantity to small businesses all around the world, shipped in all 50 states, around 44 countries. Our customer base was the moms and the pops who are surviving and thriving against the chains. So that was the earlier part of my life. And then when COVID hit, that's when I got involved with writing my book and starting to promote it and so forth. And so as I was promoting the book, it became very clear to me that 30%, one out of every three grandparents, are not involved in the raising of the grandkids. They may go to birthday parties or Christmas time and things like that, but they're really, they say to their kids, "Hey, I raised you. You're a great kid. You go raise my grandkids. I'm going to go play pickleball." So a third of us, a third of a generation really is not involved, and that bothered me. Luckily, I was able to find three other baby boomers who kind of had the same philosophy. And we decided that we were going to create babyboomer.org so that we would have a place where our generation could go to and get all kinds of information. The reason that our generation is so unique, it goes back to something we were talking about, is that, that when we were growing up, we had a common and a shared connected experience because we had three television stations and we all had landlines. We all got the same information at the same time. Our generation is diverse as anyone before us, whether it's politics or religion or ideas. But the one thing we have in common is that we have this shared experience. When you think about what is our shared experience, well, we were there when the Kennedys were assassinated, when Martin Luther King was assassinated. We were there when the landing happened on the moon. In our generation, birth control became really widespread. We had to live through Vietnam and Kent State and everything, the riots in the streets. But we also had our music. You think about Elvis and the Beach Boys and the Beatles and the Three Dog Night, Association, Supremes, some of our favorite songs and so forth. We all shared that experience. We all shared the experience with movies, whether it's Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid or Jaws, which just got all this publicity for being 50 years old. That makes me feel old. Animal House, the Star Wars, The Godfather. We have those shared experiences. And we wanted to bring all this together and have all kinds of information on one place where our generation could go to. And so that's how and why we started babyboomer.org.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love the idea of sharing information on wide array of topics like you have, either finances, health, physical activity, technology, and all those things, because it's hard to see everything and know how to take care of ourselves in this new fast-paced world, right? So I love that.
Yeah, we have 496 different topic departments, everything that you talked about. Since you're really a health specialist, I'll run through real quick the different topics we carry in health, just so if anybody's listening, they may want to come. I'm going to read them fast so that, we have health conditions like autism, mental health, and multiple sclerosis, and aging, and arthritis, and cancer, and diabetes, and disability, and fitness, and menopause, and Parkinson's, and stroke. We have lifestyle and wellness, so with beauty, and burnout, and diet, and energy, and exercise, and longevity, and resilience, and sleep. We have care and therapy for a section for doctors, and planning, and self-improvement, and healthcare costs, and hospices at the end of life, therapy, wellness, memory, skincare, caregiving, death with dignity, long-term care, and we have a special relationship with the Dementia Society of America. So, and that's just in our health department. And each one of those has all kinds of information underneath it. So, yeah, we just want to make sure that we are educating our generation. And hopefully they use some of this information to help educate their kids and grandkids.
Yeah, that is my main point because I'm an author too. And the idea is to educate parents and kids alike to know how to take care of themselves. I do see the gap with the baby boomers just because, like you said, that was the first generation before the internet. I mean, my generation X is just after yours, but I had access to internet. I was almost 30 years old. So it is interesting how there is a gap in between. Some of you, I can tell, are really up to speed with everything that's going on, but the majority is just with that big gap in between dealing with computers and apps and cell phones, and because it is a lot of technology to catch up with. So I think it's really important. And you do have topics on technology as well, right?
Well, absolutely. Don't lose sight that 12 million businesses in the US today are owned by baby boomers. Okay. So that's close to 60% of the small business world. So we've got to understand what's going on. We've got to understand AI. We have a huge section on our site about AI. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if your listeners are not using it or not aware of it, they need to be, because AI is going to be greater than the birth of the internet. It's going to be something we all need to understand. So when you think there's 12 million businesses that are still owned by baby boomers, they have to be on top of stuff. They have to be on top of marketing. They have to be on top of social media. They have to be on how do you drive sales to whatever business that you have. So yeah, that's one of the reasons we wanted to make sure that if you're part of our audience that's a business owner, we've got whole kinds of information on running a business and entrepreneurship. And the other thing is our generation, once they retire, many of us are thinking about opening up our own new business, or a side hustle or something else to keep us going, because, we don't feel our age. We all feel 10 to 20 years younger than we actually are. So that we want to make sure that we've got that kind of information for our audience too.
Yeah, you touched a very interesting point. So you said you feel 20 to 30 years younger than you actually are. So what do you think is the main contributors for your vitality?
I think one of the things that many in our generation realized in their 50s, that we got to get in shape. We have got to get back and make sure that we're exercising. We can't sit on the couch all day long. So that's what I'm seeing. I mean, they opened up a new health club down the street for me, and I went into it, and half of them were my age. It's like you would think you go into these health clubs, they'd all be in their 20s and 30s. Half of them were baby boomers. And so I think that is one thing that has been very aware is, we looked at our parents, we saw that they got old pretty fast, and what can we do to not make that happen to us? And it goes back to we got to stay in shape. You don't have to be a runner. You can do a lot of walking. You don't have to lift 100 pounds. You can lift a little bit of pounds, but as long as you keep moving and stay in shape, I personally, I've got to walk 10,000 steps a day. If I don't do that, I get upset with myself. So that's one thing I've seen from our generation is they know that if we're going to live beyond how old our parents were, that we have got to make sure we're taking care of ourselves.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned physical activity. Is there anything else that you really pay attention to these days?
The other thing is really interesting because as I talk to other people is we are spending more time going to doctors, and a lot of it's for preventative care, but a lot of it is to save our life. I'll give you a personal example. My wife, we're both 73 years old. My wife, the end of last year, wasn't feeling well. So she went to her gynecologist and, did a scan and so forth. And the gynecologist on a Thursday called her and said, you got to see a cancer doctor. So she got into a cancer doctor on Monday, and he says, you've got ovarian cancer. We got to get rid of this. And they operated on Wednesday. So,
No.
when you think about it, just because we do visit doctors, that we do understand how important they are to our lives, You know, if she was living in small town America, we probably wouldn't have caught this. Okay, but luckily she was there. The doctors were on top of it. And now, after, 8 chemotherapies and so forth, she's in remission. And that would not have happened 10 years ago. That would not have happened if we weren't living in a bigger city. So you got to step back and say, I'm seeing that more and more with my friends, and they're visiting their doctor. Okay, and we just have to do that. It's just part of, if we want to live a little bit longer, we got to make sure that we're, exercising, that we're making sure that we're visiting our doctors, that we're eating healthy. That's the key to more of us living longer. Not all of us will, but more of us will.
Yeah, yeah. It's the awareness of how your body works, right? So if you don't feel well, you notice that something is just not right. And then taking action on that feeling, right? Because I remember my grandma when I was little, she was always, that's nothing. That's nothing. I don't need to worry about that, or I don't have time to worry about that. But we should make time to take action when we don't feel well, right?
And that's just something you personally can answer. I can't answer that for you or for my wife or for my son, or I can't. It's something you have to do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the story that you just said. When I was 12 years old, I was having this pain in my side. And my grandfather says, just go back to bed. It's nothing. My parents took me to the hospital. I had to have my appendix out. So that's just something, that we all have to be aware of. But it's one of those real personal things.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be in charge of that. I can't be in charge of that. So don't get paranoid about it. I mean, we should all check things out because the longer we live, the more we can share for our kids and grandkids, the bigger legacy we can leave, and the happier we will be.
Yeah, I love that you said it's personal. It is personal because only me can know what I feel, right? So if I am in tune with my body, if I'm aware of the way things work and feel for me every day, then when something goes out of whack, I will know that something is going on, something is not right, and then take action. But this is so personal. That's why I think it's really important for us to be always in tune, always aware of what makes us feel well, what I eat, what I think, what I do, the people I talk to, because all those things have an influence on the way we feel, right? So when we are in tune with all that is around us, so we can really have that awareness of, I don't feel well, and then look for help.
One of the saddest things about our generation is that so many of us are lonely. Loneliness is, as you're getting older, you get lonelier. And there's all kinds of reasons for it, obviously. You lose your spouse, you lose your loved ones, you lose all your friends, you may move into a assisted living where you don't really know anybody. You become very lonely. And so, what you just said about sharing with others and keeping in touch with it, that's all part of the story. That always concerns me is if people don't have their connections. I mean, think about it. When I was growing up, my grandmother lived 2 blocks away. My uncles and cousins lived up the street. We were all together. Yeah, but in today's world, we're scattered all over the place. I've got kids in Florida, I've got kids in Texas. We are all over the place. So we don't have that tight-knit community. Many of us, some of us still do, if we're lucky enough to be living in the same town with our family, that our parents had, and so that we can bounce that kind of stuff off. And so, that's a real concern when everyone's scattered all over the country, and you're lonely and you have no one to talk to about what you just talked about. That's very sad for all of us.
It's really sad. When we start our conversation, when you mentioned that you had your 6 grandkids with you through COVID for several weeks, that was really interesting for me because what I see, like you said, most of the baby boomers are not engaged with their grandkids. And I thought that was so awesome that you had them with you during that time because it's really a privilege to live close to family. If we are not living close to family, it's really important for us to create those communities and engage with the local community and have somebody to share, right? To share everything. Yeah.
One of the things my grandfather told me a long, long time ago when we went camping, he always said to me, you want to leave the campsite better than you found it. And if you step back a second and think about, what we're talking about here, we want to leave our family better than we found it. We want to leave our community, our country better than we found it. And so that all goes to it that we've got to keep talking to each other and pass on how we can do that so that this greatest generation that's coming up, these kids 1 to 10 years old, will just be so much better than we ever were. And we'll do so many things better than we ever did. And we'll keep this world moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And you touched a thing that is part of my mission. I say that my mission is leave this world a better place for generations to come in terms of health and wellness, creating a disease-free place because I really believe it's possible. And yeah, that is part of my mission. And I think that should be everybody's mission. Like I said, leave the campground better than you found it. And this is really, really important. And I love the idea of creating this hub of information and knowledge in your website focused on this generation because then of course you know the needs and the interests and everything from the people same age group as you. This is one step towards this goal of leaving the campground better than you found, right? Because you saw this big,
Absolutely.
yeah, this big gap on information for this particular generation. And then you're just paving this road for them to become knowledgeable on all those different subjects and leave their campgrounds better than what they found, right?
Well, what's interesting is when we built the site, we thought people coming to the site would be baby boomers. But what has happened is their children and their grandchildren are also coming, trying to understand this generation. So, as we're talking on the site, it's not just baby boomers. I mean, baby boomers are still close to 50% of our audience, but the other 50% are younger. And so, if we can help them understand their parents, they go to our health section. Caregiving is something that they need to know about, Alzheimer's, dementia, all this kind of stuff. The other generations need to know too. So we're very pleased that the audience has grown to beyond baby boomers.
That is awesome. So, do you have all this information from your subscribers, age, and all that?
Yeah, yeah. One of the beauties of an internet site is you can track that. Every time you click something, you tell us information. That's the way that the internet works. So yes.
Cool. Cool. Very nice. So, for us to wrap up, do you want to tell people if they want to join your website, what the perks are, and if they want to buy your book and gift it to their kids, how they can do that?
Absolutely. Our website is babyboomer.org, www.babyboomer.org. And once you get on the site, you can see how you can join or just get information. And then just hang out at the site and see all kinds of stuff. You can buy my book. I've got a couple books. One is my children's book, my other book that I wrote, The Secrets of Retailing, How to Beat Walmart.
Oh,
It's a
cool.
book written for entrepreneurs. The company that I had started, our big customer base for entrepreneurs, small businesses. So it's a 15-chapter book. Talks about everything from how do you find your location, how do you hire people, how do you merchandise, how do you market yourself. And the last chapter is exit strategy. How do you get rid of your business? How do you sell? So both my books are found on Amazon. Just put the title of the book in, you can find it. Or you can come to my children's book site. It's called GrampsJeffrey.com. That's my author name for the children's book, GrampsJeffrey.com. And you can get the books there too also. But yeah, just come to babyboomer.org. Please, we just want you to be smarter today than you were yesterday.
Yeah, that is so awesome. I'll have all the information in the show notes so people can find your Baby Boomer site and your books really easily. And hopefully, we'll have lots of buyers.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate you inviting me.
Thank you so much for coming. You have a lovely day.
Thank you guys so much for listening. It means a lot to me that you chose to be here. To help Mama Terra's mission of making the world a disease-free place for generations to come, you can follow the show, write a review, or talk to your friends about it. You can also subscribe to my newsletter. Every week, I craft good health and wellness tips, recipes, and book recommendations with love and care, just for you. My intention is to give you information and resources to help you make good choices and feel well. Find the link to subscribe in the show notes. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you again for being here. We have lots of new episodes coming up, so stay tuned. And remember, good is what makes you feel well.
Transcende, levita, toma banho de cachoeira, abraça uma pessoa